Well, hello, and welcome to Association Transformation, your global podcast, pushing the envelope, testing the innovative, I don't know, breaking stereotypes. How are we billing ourselves these days, Andrew?
You
We
know, I
need it
don't
to
know.
be more.
You change it every time every
I
time
do. What if I
every
said we are the
episode.
Justice League
Oh
of
God.
associations? Or what if we're the nonprofit Avengers?
Oh God. The nerdiness knows no bounds. It really
I
does.
don't know why I've been on this nerd kick lately. Well, I
Doesn't.
mean, I am a nerd, but
Yeah.
I think we need to really, should we get like suits or belts or maybe walk up songs? I feel like we really need to jazz this up.
I I just think we just need to get on with it.
Oh, so we're just playing. Okay. So again, audience, everyone in Belgium and
Yeah.
all the other countries that listen to Association Transformation, you won't be shocked to hear that Andrew doesn't care. So welcome to Elisa's Association Transformation podcast. Andrew's here too.
Hi
But
everybody. How you doing?
Andrew Chamberlain, Chief Development Officer with Elevated, Elisa Pratt, Chief Strategist with Brewer Pratt Solutions. I'm excited to be here. And again, Andrew's just here, but I'm really excited about, and I know I'm always excited, but I'm very excited today about our guest and our topic, one that is shockingly not new. You know, this is something that, no, for me has been around for a long time, and our guest is someone I've known for a very long time. You probably know her too. She's everywhere. She's published, she speaks, she does everything. An author, and I'm very. She has her own podcast, Subscription Stories, and I mean, again, she's everywhere. So if you haven't heard of Robbie Kellman Baxter, I don't know where you've been for the last like 10, 15, 20 years. But I had the pleasure of meeting her, I don't know, I would say about 10 years ago, when she was launching her first book, The Membership Economy. And now we are eager to have her back in a post-COVID world to chat about subscription pricing, the realities of subscriptions, the opportunities, and really everything that is encapsulated in her second book, the Forever Transaction, which I'm a big fan of. Robbie, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Lisa, thanks for having me on your show, and Andrew.
Oh yeah. Thanks. No, thanks, Robbie. Thank you.
It's all right. Andrew's mom listens, but I think she knows what to expect too. So
And she knows less about what I do for a living now than she did before she listened to the podcast.
that's one of the challenges of nonprofit association world, is trying to explain it. And maybe the only thing we don't have to explain anymore is this concept of subscription pricing. I think, you know, Robbie, when we first met, I brought you to speak in front of a group of chapter executives and component leaders, and really broach this idea of a subscription model. And now, you know, is this something you even have to explain or promote or advocate for anymore? Where does the subscription mindset exist these days in 2023?
Yeah, it's amazing how much it's changed, Elisa, since you and I first met. I really felt like, I grew up subscription wise. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and a lot of my early clients were what today we would call SaaS companies, or consumer subscription companies. And as I was, writing and thinking about best practices in subscription, and thinking about, how it's not just about the subscription pricing, but it's really about a member mindset, I really was exploring what kinds of organizations think about members. And of course, associations came to mind. But when I first started to speak to association executives, and this is, as you said, 10, 15 years ago, it was a heavy lift to sort of make that connection between subscription and that word, which is fraught, with association membership. And, flash forward 10, 15 years later to 2023, I don't have to explain to anybody what those connections are, what can be learned from the Netflixes or LinkedIn's of the world, and honestly, vice versa. The bigger challenges today is, how do we do it in such a crowded environment, and how do we manage the things that have made us historically successful while continuing to evolve for the future?
Yeah, I think I think it's interesting. Speaking from a UK perspective, and even last week I was talking to a client and I said, oh, well, we start. Have you looked at the Netflix model? And they were just staring at me blankly. And it wasn't because, as you say, it wasn't because they didn't understand what I was talking about. They get it, they understand it, but trying to translate business as usual into this, what they perceive as a completely radical overhaul of the offering, seemed almost beyond them. It was like, well, it can't be done. It can't really be done. Now, we know it can be done, but how? How can it be done? Because I think a lot of colleagues, I think a lot of clients are sort of stuck in this sort of quagmire of, well, we've always done it this way, which is, which, as we know, is the downfall of so many decisions in the non-profit world. So, how do we get people to move from, or begin to envision a world where they are working in a subscription-led pricing model?
Yeah, well, so if you had asked, this is a great question, Andrew. And if you'd asked me, 10 years ago, I would have had much harder lines. And I would have said, as Netflix, who you mentioned, my very first subscription-oriented client, a pretty long time ago. As many people know who are listening, Netflix for many years was subscription only. Right now, they're just barely starting to explore an advertising driven revenue stream as well. But they don't do transactional. They don't do pay as you go. They don't do, pay what you use, buy what you need, any of that. It's you subscribe or you don't subscribe.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, because I think they were my first client, and also because of the environment that we were in and what was possible technically, I was a big proponent of either you use subscription or you don't. And I think where I come at now is either you have a membership mindset or you don't. And what I mean by a membership mindset is that you're committed to a long-term outcome for your customers. And those are the customers that you optimize for. So if, one of your clients, Andrew, if you're saying, they get what you mean, yeah, we would love to enjoy the recurring revenue of Netflix. We would love to enjoy the predictability of Netflix. We would love to enjoy the loyalty that Netflix enjoys. But we actually have a pretty extensive footprint. We have a lot of different kinds of programming, different products that we sell, right? We have databases, we have events, we do have memberships. How do we get from here to there? I think the place to start, this would be my advice, is start with what your forever promise is for your best customers. So who are you going to optimize for? You can leave everything you have for now. Don't worry, we're not going to make you shut it all down. But let's say, who are the best people that are most important for you to build relationships with right now and keep for the long term? So let's just say, for the purpose of an example, it's tomorrow's members. It's young people, right? Young volunteers, young donors, young members. How do we keep them? So you say, okay, take a step back. What is the promise that brings them here? What is the outcome, the ongoing outcome that they want to achieve, or the ongoing problem they're trying to solve? And then, so that might be, if it's in the association world, the professional world, it might be, I want to grow and thrive in a career that is respected, right? Those are kind of related, right? So the growing and thriving, I want to learn, I want to succeed, but also I want somebody to be investing in the integrity and reputation of my profession, right? So there's kind of, a lot of times two parts. So if that's the forever promise, then you say, okay, let's map out their entire journey of doing that. How does one coming out of school, let's say, think about, I want to grow and thrive in a profession that I'm proud to be a part of, right? All the different steps. And you say, okay, where are the biggest challenges for that person? And do we have offerings for them? Because if you start to optimize your offerings for that long-term relationship, you have a better chance of keeping those people for longer. I think a big mistake that a lot of organizations make is they start to optimize for a particular moment, but they don't really think about the what comes next. So that's a really good place to start. And you don't have to start with all, I think an issue sometimes is but we have tomorrow's members that we want to focus on. We also have longtime members that are about to retire. We also have people in the middle. We also have people across maybe several different flavors of job or industry or interest. So just start in one small area and figure out subscription and membership there. And then if it works, expand.
Right. Well, there's two things that really stuck out for me in what you just said, and that's that's picking that small audience. Pick your target, whether it's your most important audience or the most obvious, if you will, what that journey may look like. I know with my clients, I do the journey mapping, and it's amazing how many different entry points there are, and points of interaction and points of value for the different segments. And I think a lot of organizations can get lost and overwhelmed in that experiential map. And so picking one place to experiment, one place to pilot is an important note. But we like to say here, put your members and your mission first.
Yeah.
How does a group go about defining their promise? I mean, if before you can figure out what you're giving them and what the value of it is, how does an organization wrap their head around that promise? And I'm guessing then there are multiple promises for each group.
Yeah, well, the place that I if you're a going concern, so it's different if you're a startup and you don't have any customers. But if let's say you're starting from the beginning, but let's say that you have been doing this for a long time, like the organizations we're talking about, I would say, start with your members. So one of the things people sometimes ask me is, what's the difference between your brand promise and like what I call forever promise, or your and for me, your forever promise is what your customers say. I go to Ann Taylor because I know I can always find something that's affordable and professional for whatever my professional occasion is, let's just say. That is not what Ann Taylor says as a retailer, but it might be what some of their customers say. And so that's kind of the first thing that I think is important, is to understand what is the bigger goal that they have. I think another risk that organizations sometimes fall into is they start, and I love that you said, focus on the mission and the members. A lot of organizations fall in love with their products. They start with their mission and their member. Then they say, what awesome products can we build to support our members and their mission? And then they become a product company. So they start tail wagging dog, right? They start saying, how do we get more people to come to our event? Instead of, is our event helping our members achieve their mission? And if not, can we change it, or should we shut it down? Right? Another challenge when you've been in business a long time is you have all of these products, some of which are kind of long in the tooth, that had a perfect match to the mission 10, 15, 50 years ago when they were started. But now either they're no longer solving the problem has changed, or what often happens is there's another place where you can achieve that same goal. So for example, I remember speaking one time at an event for chartered accountants for the AICPA, right? And one of the challenges that they face is that a lot of CPA, partnerships, a lot of the big, whatever they are, big 4, big 6, big 3 firms offer free events for alums and customers, clients, right? And they have similar content and they offer it for free, right? Because for them, it's a loss leader, it's a relationship builder. Whereas let's say for a state chapter, that might be one of their big revenue drivers. So in that situation, I would advise, take a step back and say, what's your mission? Is your mission to be a great event company, or is your mission to help the professionals that you serve to achieve their goals? And, hallelujah, if somebody else is investing their own resources to help your members achieve their goals. That's a hard pill to swallow if you spent a lot developing a product that then is offered for free or a lower price somewhere else. But it's that kind of mindset, I think, that that really allows an organization to thrive in the long term.
I'm not sure I agree, Lisa, that associations are getting lost in you were talking about the kind of mapping the journey, the career mapping, if you like. So I'm not convinced, well, I can only talk obviously from direct experience, but I'm not convinced that many associations that I've worked with are not lost in the detail of members' lives. I'm not even sure that they could confidently say that they understand the career journey, the career map, the trajectory that their members are on, and so therefore able to identify what those entry points are.
Right. It's a big investment, and most don't take it on or ask the right questions or go into the level of detail, and they build their product offerings and they build their value proposition to the lowest common denominator or to the broadest audience.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what Robbie just said, and you talked about this throughout COVID, as organizations become overly committed to products. I mean, we saw during COVID, associations and nonprofits were exposed as event planners, as trade show, hosts and convention hosts. And, their value proposition didn't have much validity beyond the in-person networking. And I think it really shined a spotlight on organizations that have become overly dependent on things like that. Robbie, I wonder if you're an organization that it has that self-awareness, you understand who your member segments are and where you need to focus, you're willing to evaluate your product offerings. How do you dive in? What's your first step? I know you're a big proponent of testing and experimenting. Do you have to start with tiered options? Do you start with just one subscription option as a complement to your larger annual dues? I mean, how do you baby step into this?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of it depends answers that I would want to give you, because it depends on the situation. But I would here's a few things to make it simple. Number one, why are you looking at subscription? So what is the job that you want subscription to do for your organization? So for example, some organizations would say, I want it to create greater loyalty with people who are already familiar with us, right? They pop in for an event, or they might periodically pay for a consultation, but they aren't really fully engaged. So we want this to be a step 2, right? After you have your first transaction with us, and then we want to ease you into our membership. Or you might say, this is the first step. This is for people just out of college. We want to make it super easy for them to kind of slide right into our organization as part of their ongoing professional habits and hygiene. So that's the first place to start, is what do you want this particular membership to do? You have all kinds of products and services. What is this going to do? It's going to attract, it's going to engage, it's going to retain, it's going to expand relationships with XYZ group. So start there. That makes it a lot easier to kind of know what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And then you want to think about, as you build it, I would say build one tier first, because you have one buyer, you have one ideal member, and you want to be really focused. Now, there are some occasions where there are really obviously 2 or 3 really distinct groups or use cases. For example, individual membership when you're unemployed, and a membership that your company pays for where the whole organization has membership, or even where you're subsidized. And you might look at that and say, these are completely different people with completely different goals, and they never the two shall meet. And we would charge them very differently because of cost to serve and because of value derived. Or you might say, those two go like this, right? Which sometimes happens, right? Now I have a job, now I don't have a job, now I have a job again, versus an independent consultant compared to an enterprise where ne'er the two shall meet, right? If you're an independent consultant and you want to be part of an organization, very different goals than if you're, one of the big players in that space. So I think unless you have a very good reason to have multiple tiers, have one. But the starting point is one tier, one offering. Potentially, you can also have a free one. Sometimes that's helpful to say, this is where people join for free, and that gives us the benefit of an ongoing conversation, and it gives them the benefit of being able to achieve some piece of their bigger goal. But only one paid offering. That's where I would start.
So you'd consider, I did this just yesterday. I signed up for a newsletter, and they said, hey, you're not a member, but we want you to get the newsletter. Mm-hmm. And then we'd love to kind of win you over. So you sign up for, that's a subscription. That's the subscription model, right?
That's a freemium offering, right? It's so that word freemium, very popular in the consumer space, free and premium blended. So free forever. Freemium offering is free forever. It means when you think about your freemium offering, if the member never paid, they would still get value. So a freemium offering can't be a discount on something that they spend on, and it can't be finite in duration. Something that's finite in duration is a free trial. And that's different, and it serves a different function. So I see a lot of organizations making that mistake as well. A free trial is a taste of the most delicious thing you have, because the prospect either doesn't understand what it tastes like, or they don't believe it's as delicious as you promise. And so it doesn't need to be very big at all, because all you're doing, it's like a test drive of a car. Like when you say this car is like driving on a cloud, I don't understand what that means. And then you drive around the block and you say, oh, this feels so much better than my old car. I understand. Or you say, it is so much more responsive than any car you've ever had. And you say, I don't believe you. I drive a Lamborghini. My car is pretty darn responsive. And then you drive it and you say, oh, I believe you. So, both of those can have a place in your broader membership model. But they're very different things.
Do you think people are put off potentially with I mean, I like the idea. Let me rephrase this. I like the idea of a more complex pricing models where you combine, freemium, free trial, subscription, one piece with, fee-based play as you go type stuff, etc. I'm quite comfortable with the model, combining those. But do you think that feels potentially overwhelming for some membership organizations who are struggling just struggling to make the step anyway? Do you think that there's a fear that, oh God, if we're going to make this, if we're struggling and we perceive it as quite difficult, is it going to confuse our market, if you like, our audience, our members?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up, Andrew, because I think it's true on both sides. So on the organization side, every time you have a new revenue stream, every time you have a new way of pricing for value, a different offering, that's a product that you have to keep track of. And that you have to, have a price for, and you have to have policies around, and, somebody has to know what it comes with, and somebody has to manage the website for that particular offering. So the more you have, the more complexity you have on the organization side. It also makes it harder to know what's working and not working because there's so much variety. On the customer side, on the member side, the more options that a member has, the more you're asking them to become an expert on your product portfolio. And you're asking them to keep their wits about them. If you have one offering, you say, relax. If you like what we have, you sign up here, we charge you a fair price, and you never have to think about it again. That allows the customer, the member, to relax into the relationship. If you say we have 100 things, the implied subtext is, and if you don't make the right choice, you're going to overpay, or you're not going to get the value you came here for in the first place. And so it creates a little bit of distance, I believe, between that member and the organization. It sometimes, as you point out, sometimes it's unavoidable because people just have very different needs, very different different amounts of value that can be created, and it's important to have a variety. I think Amazon is a good example of this. They have so many different offerings. They have Amazon Prime, but they also have different levels, and they also have, if you use Prime Video, you can subscribe, but you can also rent and you can also buy specific elements of content, and that changes over time. So a new title might be available for rent at a high price, and then available for rent at a lower price, and then put back into the pool of the catalog for Prime Video. I think that's kind of complicated, but I also think in their case, it does seem to be working. They're trying to optimize in every transaction, whereas and they're willing, I think, to make the trade-off of people being kind of confused. Like, I thought that Prime Video meant that I got access to everything, but I want to watch the newest, hottest movie. You guys talked about Avengers, right? And suddenly that's available for $19.99, which can be confusing.
Well, gosh, I have so many questions. A lot of organizations in the last 12, 24 months, probably before that, have talked about auto renewal. And I wonder, does that mean subscription? I mean, if you're putting your members and their annual dues on auto renewal, I don't know, Robbie, maybe this is a stupid question. I apologize, but how does that fit into this mix?
So I think that's a really important question, Elisa. And I think, a lot of organizations get sort of wrapped up in nomenclature, in the language or the lexicon of how to, what does it mean to be a subscription, and what does it mean to be a member, and is it different? And, is this a free trial? What do all these different terms mean? And I think it's great on the organization side that everybody on the organization side agrees about what things mean, but it doesn't always, you don't have to use the same language with the audience, with your members and your prospective members. They may have very different words for it. With regard to subscription versus renewal, to me, it's the same thing, right? It's an auto pay. Subscription's a pricing decision, and basically, it's a contract that says, unless you cancel, I am going to continue to deliver this suite of benefits to you on an ongoing basis, until that day that you say stop. So is auto renewal the same thing as subscription with a different title? Is continuity program the same thing? Now, there are some nuances in terms of the legalities of different pricing structures. So, for example, in some cases, the payment happens, here, but revenue recognition happens later, or vice versa. That's a whole different set of issues. But from the perspective of optimizing this business model with customers, with members, with subscribers, it's the same thing, same rules.
Well, Andrew and I, we've had some experience failing in this arena, not knowing what the language was supposed to mean, or that the freemium model had to mean free forever. But I'm taking diligent notes here, between free trial, discount, subscription. And I think there's so much to be learned here. There's so much opportunity. I would encourage everyone to go out and get the Forever Transaction. It contains best practices. It is a blueprint. Before you bring this up as a part of strategic planning or a board meeting, or a revenue discussion, I would encourage you to check out Robbie's book, again, the Forever Transaction. To see where you might fit. But more than anything, I'm proud of this approach, because I know it's not just a gimmick. It's not just a trend, because it's based in a respect for the member, an appreciation for the member and their journey, and truly defining the unique value that each of your audience needs. So for me, that's what makes it sincere. That's what makes it plausible. And I'm really, really excited to have you back. I know we haven't seen each other for a while, but you're great. You're everywhere, and you're consistently amazing on this topic. And I'm so excited to have had you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me to come back and chat with you and with Andrew. This was a lot of fun. I feel like there's a lot more we could talk about.
There is. I know we've just scratched the surface, and I will note, Andrew's super cheap, and he loves freebies and downloads and templates and all of that. And you offer a lot of free goodies on your website, RobbieKelmanBaxter.com, and I know there's samples from the books there. Everyone can check it out. So Andrew's probably Googling and downloading all the freebies that you offer.
How dare you only make there's 2 pages available? I want all
he wants
the whole chapter on cult. I have the whole chapter on building a culture for subscriptions available for download, among other things, as well as how to scale your subscription, how to retain customers, members. So yeah, I love free stuff too. Free is the best price. There's actually an awesome book. It's pretty old now, but it was really inspiring for me when I wrote my first book, and I think it's called like Free: A Brief History of a Great Price. So I'm right there on free stuff.
Well, Robbie, thank you so much for joining us. Please come back. I'm sure there are more books in your future, and it doesn't seem like subscription pricing and the subscription approach is going anywhere soon. So we wish you the best of luck. We so appreciate you shining a light and helping organizations, both for-profit and nonprofit, see this this tactic as plausible for their organizations and their business models. So thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. Thanks for sitting in.
I know it's always my pleasure. Always.
As always, we appreciate you joining us for Association Transformation. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Make us one of your favorites. And until next time, put your members and your mission first.